everyone, my name is Faz. I'm from Nintendo Players UK, and I'm here once again with a very special friend this time around. He is the lead designer from Runbow, from 13am Games, Thomas McCall. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, actually. I'm actually quite excited because I get to ask game design questions. Woohoo!
Ooh.
Wow, that was a weird woohoo. My voice shot hard there. So obviously you're no stranger to the game design stuff, but just for everyone who may not know who you are, would you mind giving everyone a bit of a rundown of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so as mentioned, my name's Thomas McCall. I'm the lead designer at 13am Games, and I'm basically, I touch all aspects of the game regarding like level design. I've made a bunch of levels, gameplay itself, so systems that work within there, in general, just art implementation, code implementation, etc., etc. It's a pretty small studio, so we all do a lot of different things and touch a lot of different disciplines.
So as far as I've understood it, everyone in your sort of team has some form of capabilities in every area, or at least get to implement.
Well, for the most part. I mean, there's some that are specialized a bit more, and there's some of us that, like, as someone that makes a lot of the content, I have to understand, like, when art gives me this, how do I get that in? When tech makes a script or a system, how do I implement it? How does it work? And blah blah blah. So I have to see the big picture, but also understand the granality of all the little things. I don't know if granality is a word.
I've never heard of that word. That's the first time.
Graininess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like all the little itty bitty details, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, there we go.
Yay! We're getting there.
Yeah.
You said you can't learn things.
Yeah.
So I guess we start at the beginning, and you've probably heard this question plenty of times, but just for those who may not be aware, how did Runbow begin?
So Runbow actually began as a game jam game that we made during the Toe Jam, so I think it's the Toronto Game Jam here. And we made the original concept in 48 hours while we were all still students at George Brown College. So we kind of split up into two teams with the class. Half the class made Runbow and the other half of the class made a game called Miss Cthulhu. And that was basically the inception of the game itself. From there, the feedback that we got from showing it to people at the game jam itself kind of led us to think that maybe we had made something kind of cool. So we worked on it a bit more, showed our professors, got a green light to take it to, there's a local competition here called Level Select? No. God, I'm going to forget the name of it. I think it might be Level Select. No. Oh, they're going to get mad at me if I get that wrong. But there's a competition here where all the local colleges kind of come together, colleges, universities, other game programs, they come together with their student projects. We submitted Runbow as one of them, had it on the show floor, and there's a group of judges that come around, and the games are judged on various aspects, so art, tech, design, general, like, what's it called? The audience appreciation, or people walk around and they get to vote themselves. And at the end of it, we actually won Best Design, which we were not expecting with looking back at Runbow. I don't think we should have expected to because of how it looked and everything, but that's what we got, and we were all super surprised and super happy. So we were like, okay, so this kind of confirms that we've made something interesting. The rest of it kind of is just a whirlwind of making it, polishing it a bit more, contacting Nintendo. They're taking some interest and, just continuing to develop it until it became something that we could get behind and eventually, finish and polish.
So going back to the Nintendo side of it, 'cause you mentioned it, how long did it take from to effectively to Nintendo noticing? Could you tell us a bit more about that? How did Nintendo find out about it? Is probably the first question, really.
Yeah. So I think the competitions are usually that event usually happens in April. To my knowledge, again, I could be getting these things wrong. My memory is not the greatest.
To be fair, it was a while ago.
Yeah, it was 3 years ago. So after that, we worked on it for a little bit, and we were moving from kind of we're still in school. We were moving from kind of regular classes to more of the thesis projects.
Yes.
The transition kind of happening June-ish, March-ish, June. And one of the people on our team had ordered a Nintendo Wii U development kit because he wanted to make a game and get it on kit for his thesis project.
Oh, okay.
So we saw this as an opportunity to, I don't know, try it out with something we had already made. So we took Runbow, put it on the Wii U dev kit, and then decided, like, you know what? I mean, probably being young and naive at the point, we're like, we're going to just cold call Nintendo and send it to them. So wrote up an email, got a hold of somebody and fired it off. And I think we were lucky enough to hit a point where Nintendo was looking to bump up their kind of like indie third-party scene, as I believe it was a point of criticism on their end.
Yeah.
So I think it was, I forget exactly who we sent it to. It might have been someone named Alex Palmeras. But they immediately took interest in what it was at the time. After some back and forth, they agreed to kind of take us under their wing a bit and take us to Indiecade, which was kind of like our first non-student event, so to speak. So we worked on the summer while we were all doing our thesis projects for school. We were also taking time to work on Runbow a couple days a week, got it polished up enough to like where we were happy with it, and then we took it to Indiecade. And from then on, based on the reception of Indiecade and now Nintendo wanting to support us, we looked into how can we turn this into a real thing, how can we build a studio and get this game out.
Okay, so the game came first before the studio.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess by the logical wherever this line is leading, I can't remember the exact segue to this, but basically, as the next part of the story suggests, how did you come up with the name 13am Games then, since that's what's happening next in Rumbow's life?
I can never remember the actual thing, because we've made a bit of a joke about telling different stories every time about the different names Inception. I think it started with a play on 13 Angry Men.
Was it?
Because there were 12 Angry Men, or the movie.
Yeah.
And there were 13 of us in the class at the time.
Yeah.
And somebody's thought of 13 a.m., so 13 Angry Men. But then the quirkiness of that is kind of what caught us. It's like 13 a.m. sounds more like a time.
It does. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And so we kind of leaned into that a bit more. That's the part that we ended up liking about it.
It's like a late riser, I guess. That's
or just the hour that we all wish we had when we're making games.
See,
that you could just tack onto a day.
That's true. I think of it as like that's the time I wake up, because I'm spent all night, like all day, all night, and then you working at God hours in the morning, like 6 a.m. and just like I'm just gonna wake up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but that's a.m. to us. That's our start of the day.
Yeah. So that's kind of, and we rallied around that, and we just decided that was going to be it, and then it's kind of stuck.
And that explains the logo as well, because it's a clock.
Yeah, the original one, and now the kind of updated cuckoo clock thing that we've got going on.
Working at crazy times, that's the way.
Basically.
All right. That's actually quite interesting to hear, to be fair, because normally you hear like the team form first. So you started off from this game jam, and then it kind of spiraled, I guess, out of control to the point of somewhat of a runaway train into this Indiecade thing. So tell me more about this event at Indiecade. When you showed this game off to Indiecade, you were with, I'm guessing, with other indie devs.
Yep.
What was it that like? Because you're going from a student to effectively a professional, straight out,
or an amateur.
Were you surrounded by other people at the time? Because looking at I'm basing this off the time you were at EGX, by the similar types of people that were there. So we had Typo Man and so on and so forth.
Yep.
What was that feeling like? Were you surrounded by other amateurs, or did you think, oh no, I'm with other professionals now? I
think it was a bit of a mix. I think the booth, we were next to Shovel Knight, which was kind of a big deal for us because Yakuza Blames. And exactly. Wow. So we got to meet them, introduce ourselves, hang out with them. We also, I think this is the event where we met the guys from Sports Ball.
Yeah.
And some of the other games that would eventually become kind of guest characters. This is kind of where that started. Actually, mostly started with trying to convince the Shovel Knight guys to let us put Shovel Knight in the game, and when they somehow said yes, that kind of opened up the gates to, you know, oh, if Shovel Knight's in it, I guess it's okay if RIP's in it too, kind of thing. So that worked out really well. But it was a bit surreal at the time, because this is kind of like, we weren't expecting to be at that stage with something that we made at a jam so quickly, and it was kind of a bit overwhelming, and we didn't know what we were doing, to be fair, at the time, or like not to the extent that we do now, in terms of like presentation and trying to get, you know, taking feedback at the time and all this good stuff. But it was a really great experience. It really kind of solidified the team as like, oh, we're actually doing this. This is actually working. Maybe let's see how this goes. And people banded together, and that's when we decided, like, yeah, let's turn this into a real company and have a go at it.
Well, that kind of answers one of my other questions, to be fair. But we'll get to that a little bit later. What was the like working with Nintendo? What was that sort of support like, if you're allowed to ask? I'll answer that.
Yeah, I mean, they were supporting in the in marketing, in bringing us to these kind of events, in you know, echoing our social media attempts, and that working with them in terms of like correspondence, they're awesome. They were really easy to get a hold of compared to some of the other developers. I don't want to like, we got kind of your boilerplate response, whereas we actually got a hold of somebody at Nintendo. It could have been that they were waiting and looking for these kinds of things, and we just happened to nail that opportunity, but that's how it felt. So it was really cool. They were really open about it. They gave lots of good feedback. They were encouraging us. They helped us actually get, like, basically how with the guest characters, we created a short list of like characters that we thought would be cool in the game, and kind of gave it to them, and they're like, yeah, we can try to make this happen. So they were kind of a liaison for some of that, which was super helpful. But overall, like, they invited us to, I mean, I'm skipping ahead a bit, but after the launch of Runbow, or right before, again, timelines, my brain, not so sure.
It's okay.
We actually went to Nintendo's headquarters, and we did like a lunch and learn with the people at NOA America, or not NOA, that's a Nintendo of America. So we went and did a lunch and learn there. We presented Runbow to like the office. It was really interesting. We ended up meeting like Reggie. They filmed a short trailer with us where like some of the people that had been helping us at Nintendo were in it. Reggie was in it. So that was really cool. That was kind of like the epitome of what we could have asked for at the time. I
gotta ask, what's Reggie like, and is he actually a robot? Because apparently one of the trailers back then, he was a robot. Can you confirm or deny?
He's not a robot, okay. At least not a bad one. He could be a very good robot. I wouldn't know. But he's a huge man, and he's super friendly, super nice. It was really cool meeting somebody like that, who is like he's a big cheese, right? And having him come down and like meet us all, these lowly like first game devs coming out of college.
I mean, at this point, like, we can't really call you lowly now, can we? Your game's kind of taken over the world. I mean, it's reached us here in the UK, so that to me is a big.
I mean, at the time, we were still. I think this was pre-launch, before we understood, you know, that we would have this kind of like moderate success that we did. But no, he was super chill, super nice, and he was actually in the trailer, which we were not expecting, and we thought that was really cool.
You kind of already told us this one, but we're going to take a few steps back. How did your sort of personal journey towards video games begin? Where did your inspiration start?
So I've always loved games. I've played them my whole life, basically. My parents, despite their best efforts, eventually agreed to get me my first console, and that was kind of the end of that. But I didn't actually pursue it out of high school, or when you would normally, like, when you're kind of making that decision about what you want to do. I decided that, you know, video games would be a hobby, and I wanted to do engineering. So I actually took civil engineering at a University of Waterloo here, graduated from that, but after doing a couple co-ops and working on site for a couple things, I realized, like, this doesn't this is not, it's not doing it for me, so to speak. Like the work's cool and interesting, but it just, there was something that didn't, it wasn't, I didn't see myself doing this for the rest of my life, sort of thing. Which might have been a really early call considering I was pretty fresh. But anyway, I looked into game programs because I was like, I might as well jump into something that is super interesting to me. Found a couple programs here in Canada. I actually flew out to Vancouver to try a program there. Didn't like being out in Vancouver, so I came back to Ontario. And that's when I joined the George Brown College program. That is where we met everybody, and that's where all the shenanigans started, so to speak.
So just to be clear, you did a civil engineering thing at uni, and then you went back to college.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just
to take game design.
No, it's fine. Some people, I will say as it is, like there are some people who have already finished university here and then may want to get into game design later, because you hear so many different types of stories where it's like, oh, I did something else first and then did this on the side, and then it's like suddenly it spiraled out of control and therefore it worked out. So this is kind of the first time where it's sort of the other way around, where you finished it, you kind of already accomplished one goal and then decided it wasn't for you and then went into game design, as opposed to game design was the side thing in the whole time, and it just okay, I've got responsibilities to this game now. At least that's what I tend to hear anyway. What was the games you used to play with as a child? Don't worry, you don't have to be biased. It's fine.
No. I actually missed the kind of Nintendo wave. So my first console was actually the PlayStation.
Oh.
I didn't have any of the earlier ones, despite my friends having them. So I didn't have any of the Nintendo 64 classics or any of the SNES stuff. Yeah. But I played a lot of Twisted Metal.
Yep.
Crash Bandicoot was a big one. Oh God, I'm trying to think. There's so many random small games that like I can picture in my head, but I don't remember the name of, because we used to just like rent one every weekend. Those games were big on that, and then eventually got an Xbox. Halo was a huge game for me, still is. I love first-person shooters. That game was a gateway to a lot of things that I do now. Oh God.
So it's kind of strange that you mentioned those games, because.
I'm a bit of a black horse in the office, or a bit of a not an ugly duck, I guess.
No, you're not an ugly duck. You're beautiful. It's fine. Now, the reason why I say that is because none of these games sort of seem to go towards Runbow by any stretch of the imagination. So, how did it go? Like, what influenced Runbow in terms of its focus towards what seems to be a Smash Bros for indie games?
Right.
Because you've mentioned here, because it's sort of like Mario Kart. And like, I'm tilting my head.
It's well, it was, so when it came up in the jam, it was kind of a collaborative effort. So it wasn't just my experiences, my game kind of library going into it. It was the other people in the office as well. And I think the original idea was something like a gauntlet runner. Yeah. Where it was more like. You couldn't directly interact with people. It was kind of like survive until the end, or whoever lived the longest. So it would be still multiplayer, but you'd be running a gauntlet, and it was purely like traversal hazards. So you could just jump and run and all this stuff and try to avoid dying. And then one of the guys had the idea of, well, why don't we have this like color mechanic where things are changing color and blah 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 blah. We're like, well, that's actually, like, let's try that. That sounds really interesting. We threw it in. Or, like, this was still conceptual, so we threw that idea in the pot. It worked with it a bit and eventually came up with basically the core of what Runbow is, which is a platform racing, multiplayer, fighting, action, survive to the finish type thing, party game. It's so strange to try to I still don't know what genre it really fits into. We call it like action platform racer.
Did a lot of speedrunners kind of respond well to this game? Because it sounds like something that they would appreciate, or have they just not figured out that this might be a game for them?
There was a couple, I think a few speedrunners picked it up initially, but we didn't really hear much from that scene except for one individual, Munchakupa, who is a Shovel Knight speedrunner as well. I think he's done other games. He probably has, but he's a really great guy. We're actually he's actually got finally, after several attempts, he's got Runbow into Summer Games Done Quick,
Hey.
which is happening next week.
Hey.
So they're actually going to be doing a Behemoth run next week, which I'm really excited about. But that's the kind of the first instance of like an official speedrunning event, I guess you could say. I don't follow the scene closely, so I could be getting all this wrong. There could be a bunch of people that are trying right now, but there hasn't been a lot of back and forth except for Mancha, who took us Shine to it early on.
Well, good luck to him, SGDQ. We'll wait with bated breath. So, you mentioned the color mechanic earlier. So, how did you sort of nail that down? Because there could have been many different ways you could have handled the rainbow mechanic, even though it's just I guess from a trailer perspective, it is just a swipe. But how did you sort of what could you talk a bit about the process towards getting it to its final form? And the other thing is, just to shout these guys out, the QA guys, how was that sort of perfected for them, just to try and make sure that it played the way that it was imagined, if that makes any sense?
So it started out again at that jam. We actually had 8, so I think in the final game it rotates between 4 colors in a palette to kind of keep it manageable. It's 4. And originally it started out with 8, and each player would also be its own color. And when the color was your color, you could like phase through the walls or various objects that were also colored your color. So it was much more like each person had a color, and the colors would come through in a cycle, and when it was your color, you could do something really cool. But what we found out was the moments came too few and far between with 8. With 8 colors, you had, if you break it down, there's like a 12.5% chance that like it's your color at any one time, which is not actually that impactful in most people's gameplay. And we wanted to do the disappearing platform thing, and when there's only a 1 in 8 chance of the platforms disappearing, they're basically not, is how it was playing out. So we took that and we're like, okay, we just need to have less colors, because then there's a higher chance that things are actually disappearing when they should be, and creating those moments of tension and unpredictability. So did that, got it down to that kind of 4 colors, removed the bit where the player had any kind of agency or tie to the colors themselves, because we found it to be a little hectic and a little hard to control and a little hard to communicate. So we pulled it out and found that we were getting a much better response with nothing in its place. And then from there, some of the bigger challenges came with the online, trying to sync up the randomization of the color, because it was local, and I think just local, like local multiplayer, it's completely random. So the platforms get assigned colors at the beginning of the round. The background comes in at random colors, whatever it decides at the time, so it's unique every time. That doesn't necessarily work so well with online, so that was a hurdle, was trying to get these randomized things to sync up, because if something goes wrong, one player sees the color as blue, the other player sees the colors like the platform is orange, and these things creep up. With regards to QA, which being a small studio, which is also something I led, we just treated it, I think in the single player stuff, as more curated. So I think the colors are set on predictable patterns, and I think the platforms have their colors locked, so that we don't run into these moments where it's like, hey, this section's just straight up unbeatable. Where, like, imagine there's a span of 3 platforms that are all blue, and you can't actually make the gap before a platform goes loose and you fall. Like, these things would happen, or like a giant chunk would just be red. And it's like, okay, that becomes unplayable. Everybody dies when the color goes red, because everyone's standing on a red platform. So we took liberty to minimize that by having the platforms or colored objects be a little smarter, so they understand what other objects around them are colored as well, so that they don't, when they are randomizing, they don't choose something that's been chosen a lot. And in like single player stuff, it's mostly curated, so the colors and the platforms are the same every time. It's just that makes sense. It would eliminate a lot of confusion and unnecessary tension. But for the local multiplayer, it's just a crab bucket, because we said that's a lot of fun.
Oh, okay. Well, to bear that in mind when I play online. Jeez. Okay, so this one was a requested one. So you have a lot of indie characters show up on Rumbow, and you already explained how Shovel Knight set up.
Yes.
And you said Nintendo helped you get the others, but
Yep.
how was it them coming to you, or is it them coming to quote unquote Nintendo, or is it like, oh, we're interested in Guacamelee and we want them to come up? Would you mind helping us talk to them, or did you talk to them directly? Like, what was the process of getting those indie characters in?
So it kind of varied, studio to studio. Some studios, like for instance, the Guacamelee guys, they're Drinkbox. They're here in Toronto with us, and we know them. So we just asked them straight up if we could do it. We didn't necessarily need Nintendo's involvement. And Shovel Knight as well, like meeting them at Indiecade. Some of the other ones, if we didn't know them directly or have like any kind of have never met them before, we tried to use Nintendo to kind of open up the gate. Give us a bit more, I guess you could say, validity. Yeah. Because if it was just some random studio being like, hey, we want your character in our game, and we haven't released anything, and we're a bunch of students, they'd be like, maybe not. But, having Nintendo help us out with that really kind of warmed people up to the idea. Once we got a cast going, it kind of snowballed. It got easier and easier to get people in, to the point where we were having some people request that they were in, and we couldn't because time and creating the costumes and animations and whatnot, we didn't have time to get it all in.
Can you reveal any of the suggested characters, that at least the requested characters that you didn't get a chance to put in?
I'm trying to think. I'm honestly trying to think. I can't remember. I know it happened, I just can't remember the game or studio. There was only a handful. It was like maybe 2 or 3, and we were really sad about it, but it was a necessity at the time to not add anything more to the game.
Who was your favorite character from the guest cast? What was your favorite addition?
That's tricky. I actually really like oh god, I'm gonna get his name wrong. Oh no, the guy from SteamWorld Dig, the main character from SteamWorld Dig. I really should know his name. Rusty. Oh, god, I was like Clanky, Steamy. Those aren't it. Something else.
They would make good names though.
This is Rusty and his buddy Clanky and Steamy, and we fired the guy that names things.
Yes.
But I liked him a lot because his animation is like taunt animations. Also, I met those guys as well. Oh god, Image and Form, right? Yeah, that's them.
Yeah.
I've met them. They're really cool guys. They're really awesome. So I really like that we got their character in. I personally, when we play the game, I tend to stick to our character. I play Pink Pirate Hugh because that's, I don't know, I claimed him as my main early on, and now I feel like if I change it, I'll get ribbed by the guys at the studio. So I always play Petey the Pink Pirate. That's my go-to.
No matter the patches, even if he gets nerfed.
No matter. No. He's my boy.
Hashtag nerf pink.
They actually, so a segue, to kind of like, it's a small studio. We're all pretty good friends. We, we'd pull jokes on each other sometimes. For a while, the program, like our Marty, our technical director, had coded in that if somebody hit all 4 of the trigger and bumper buttons at the same time, if Petey was in the game, specifically the pink pirate costume, the pink character with the pirate costume on as Hugh, he would self-destruct. So while we were playing and testing, they would just randomly kill my character, and I would be like, there's a bug. Like, that's a bug. Did you see that? I just died. I just died out of nowhere. And they're like, no, you didn't die. You got hit by a thing. And they were like gaslighting me.
Oh my god.
And like playing this prank on me, and it went on for longer than I'd like to admit. Before I was like, no, you guys are doing this. And it was like, it was a day when I finally figured it out. They were laughing at me pretty hard. It was good.
Oh my god.
I'm still plotting how to get him back.
Put it in the game.
And I will.
I want to see that mode in the game.
Where you can just self-destruct a random.
Yes. Yes. I want to see it in the game. It'd be amazing. It'd be mayhem.
It would be. On top of the mayhem that it already is.
Let's know in the comments if that's what you want to see. Randomly self-destructing characters in Rumbow. I feel like that would be a great addition in the future.
A little timer over your head.
moving on to the guest characters before I forget, how much collaboration went into converting them into the Rumble style characters? Especially with, I forgot, there's another question as well. I do apologize. I'm just like,
No worries.
I can't read today. But how much collaboration went into converting them into the Rumble styles, the guest characters, that is?
Yeah. Once we got the green light to kind of like put them in, we would get a contact for, I guess, the person on their team that's in charge of art and art style and art direction, and he would correspond with our art director, and they would. Some studios had more, some studios had less. Again, depends studio by studio, person by person. But we would make something, send it to them. They would give style or feedback. We would take that, edit it. We'd ask them for what kind of animations would make sense for like the victory poses, because those are the unique animations to the characters when they taunt, not victory poses, taunting. And they would let us know, and so our art director Takashi would work with them to put it all in. But for the most part, yeah, it was varying levels, mostly not super hands-on, but some studios a little more than others. Getting Shantae in was I think they were the most kind of concerned about how Shantae was going to look at the end, and I'm really happy with the final product, so I think that was great to work with them like that. It was awesome.
Last 2 questions. So the first one is, what character as the level designer, as the lead designer, lead designer.
I do both.
You do everything. You're just 13 a.m. You're the embodiment.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
No, I won't claim that. But
if you bleed, it just says 13 a.m. constantly. No, I'm joking. No, what I was trying to ask was if you had a choice of, I'll say 3. Let's be kind. Of 3 guest characters to add in. What would you put in? Now, we are called Nintendo Players UK, so that should give you a bit of a hint. But
yeah. And this is like Blue Sky. Jeez.
If you had any choice, let's say you can add anyone from a certain party brawler that kind of got a name fairly recently.
Yeah. Let's. I'm gonna go with that cast. I would definitely put Samus in as. She's my main character when I play Smash Bros, which I used to play quite a bit. So I would love to see a Samus in there. I mean, Mario would be a dream, but obviously it's probably really hard to get it.
You say that, but then you're here. So I'm thinking it's like it may not be as far as you think.
maybe if we make a sequel or something, I don't know. And then I don't know who a third would be. It's tricky. Maybe Kirby.
Kirby would just eat everyone, I think. And Pink, oh my god.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It'd be really interesting if we actually could incorporate some of the mechanics into the characters themselves.
Alright, okay. And of course, I always ask this type of question at the end of every interview, but as a games designer, what do you, in your time in the video games industry, that is almost 4 years now, I guess. What do you think is the most important thing to remember for those trying to get in?
Oh, for trying to get in?
Or creating a game, whichever you feel is most important. What do you think is the most important thing, whether it's to do with game design or whether it is to getting into the industry? What advice would you give to someone trying to get in?
Yeah. First off would be, download an engine, try to make something yourself. If you're not that's the advice I got a lot, and it does actually really help to make your own things and see how that goes, because you'll learn a lot more from just trying to do something than, trying to learn all the various aspects of design. Most of it kind of rolls out as you're trying to, I'm going to make a level. Why does this level feel so bad? Oh, it's because I'm not doing this. And then you kind of, you as you build, you will go and find the information as you need it, or at least that's from my experiences. If you're not one of those people that can do that, or you have commitment issues where you'll start a game and then it'll peter off because I'd say look for a local college program that does something similar, because it is a good way to surround yourself with people that are like-minded. It is a good way to force yourself into a schedule if you have a hard time with that. I have to go to class because I'm paying for this, because it's a thing I've signed up to do. Therefore you're kind of driving yourself. And then I guess the third one would be start small. Start very, 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 very small with your first ideas or first games. I'm talking single mechanic. Make one mechanic make one thing that you can do and make it shine as much as you can, and just take that idea and polish it until you have something that you're proud of, and then see what else you can do with it. But I see a lot of people, they come in and they're like, oh, this is going to be it's like Skyrim but twice as big, and you can also do this, and you can do this and this and this, and you hear those things and you're like, okay, you don't understand what scope is yet. So I would always say start with a tiny, like just the tiniest part you can, make it as good as you can, and then move on to the next point. Do the same thing. Move on to the next one. Do the same thing, and keep it simple. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you very much, Thomas, for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself while you're here.
I have. Yeah, that's been great.
We hope to see you soon, and hopefully see you back in the UK. Maybe we'll do an in-person thing sometime. So
that'd be great.
Where can everyone find you? And if they want to learn more about Runbow coming out on the Switch set. Oh yeah, I forgot to ask about that.
Yeah.
My apologies.
It's coming out to Switch and PS4. I believe the date is July 3rd. So this year. You can find us at like 13amgames.com. I think the Twitter is also just 13am. We don't have an Instagram, and we have a Facebook that's also just 13am. That's where you can find us.
And of course, you can find Nintendo Players UK on Twitter at Nintendo Play UK. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram under the name Nintendo Players UK. Thank you everyone who sent in questions. And once again, we will be doing more interviews like this, so do stay tuned on our Facebook and all that jazz. Do let us know in the comments what character he should put into Runbow in future, and maybe whatever madness mode you'd like to see in a future Runbow game. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining us. And as always, if you want to find a community near you, you can use the website www.nintendoplayers.uk. Thank you very much for joining us, and I shall see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.